Hi guys, welcome to the 8th video of Module 6. Here I'm going to give you a very quick introduction to what is Fast API, why should we use it, and how we can use it. So let's get started. Well, before we actually start this whole idea of Fast API, I really want you all to first of all understand, at least on a high level, that what is an API. Because once this workflow is clear, it will be very easier for you to digest that where exactly this Fast API fits in. So to begin with, what is an API? So API stands for Application Programming Interface. Now you might be confused about what is this application programming interface. Well, it is like a messenger that helps different type of applications or softwares communicate with each other. It makes it easier for applications to work together and provide you with the services that you need without you having to know any type of technical details happening behind the scenes. I know that all this kind of text might not have made any kind of sense to you, but let me give you a very classical analogy to actually give you an overall idea of how an API works. So here we are having an example of this restaurant. So let's just imagine this whole scenario. You are going to a restaurant of your choice. Over there you are going to get a menu card. Now in that menu card, you are having some different type of dishes that you can order at that particular restaurant. So you are going there, you are looking into the menu, browsing through all these different options. Then depending on the type of the mood that you are having, it might be like, let's say for example, having some kind of pizza, some kind of noodles, so on and so forth, whatever it is, you are deciding to place an order. You're going to call your waiter and you're going to pass all this information that these are the type of dishes that I would like to have. And along with that, let's say if you are someone like me who likes to have a specific kind of taste in my food, I would normally just pass some of the cooking instructions. Let's say, for example, it should not have any kind of onions or garlic to it, or whatever kind of customizations that you would like to have for yourself, right? So, what's really going to happen is you had a menu. From that menu, you have decided some of the items. You called the waiter. You pass this kind of orders to that waiter along with some of the cooking instructions. Now, what's really going to happen is that waiter is going to go to the kitchen, and then inside the kitchen, you are having a chef, and waiter passes all of your orders along with specific customizations to the chef. Now, chef can have two different type of response. The first one is where you are not able to prepare the food depending on the specific type of customization. Let's say on the pizza that you ordered, onion is mandatory. You cannot have that pizza without having onion. So if there are some kind of invalid kind of customizations that you've asked for, your chef is going to inform it to your waiter, and that waiter is going to tell you that you know what, this type of specific customization that you cannot order. Then what's really going to happen is you're going to change the customization depending on what is suitable to you at that particular point of time, and then pass that information to the waiter. That waiter is again going to come back to this kitchen, pass that information to the chef, and once chef is comfortable with all these kind of instructions that you have passed in, you're going to get the food that he or she is going to prepare over there, pass it to the waiter, and then that food is going to be brought to you by that waiter and served to you. So that's pretty much about this whole example. And now let us try to relate it with this kind of information that I had given you in the previous slide. That is, API is like a messenger that helps different applications or softwares to communicate with each other. It makes it easier for applications to work together and provide you with services that you need without you actually having to know about these technical details happening behind the scenes. And if you compare this whole scenario over here with this example, this waiter is acting like a messenger between you and the person in the kitchen, that is the chef. Now, if there are specific requests that you want to pass to the chef, API is going to transfer all the kind of requests to this server, that is the chef in the kitchen. And then if that kind of request is valid, then what's going to happen? The chef is going to allow and give you the specific items that you asked for. And now you don't really need to know what is really happening in the kitchen. You are not at all worried about that. The main thing you're going to get from the kitchen or the server would be the final thing that you asked for in format of a response. So that's a complete understanding of how an API works. It's just a mediator or a messenger in between the application and the server that you're having over here. And now just to make sure that everything is in a proper place, I am having one more diagram to understand everything. That is, first of all, you are having a client application which is going to generate an API request to a specific server or a database from which it requires some of the specific things. Therefore, depending on if the request is valid or not, you are going to get a API response. Then that response, let's say for example, if the request was not valid, you're going to get some kind of an error code. Or else if the request was valid, in that case, you're going to get a specific part of the service or the data that you are requesting for in the form of API response. So that's the whole idea that you're going to deal with. And now I just want you all to think about one technical example. Let's say that you are working on a project in which you'll be requiring the weather data. That is, what will be the weather in different type of locations on the globe. So for that, you will typically require a satellite or different type of data sources. And there is a lot of work that you will have to do in order to fetch this kind of weather data on different latitude and longitude coordinates around the globe. A better workaround over here would be to use this weather API that we are getting from the openweathermap.org. Over here, you will be finding the API documentation, just like how we are having a menu card in the restaurant. You are having a documentation of how you can use this particular API. It's telling you that you can make an API call to receive access to the various data like current weather and forecasts, weather data for any timestamps, so on and so forth. And it's also, let's say for example, if you're going to create an API for yourself, you can keep the first few API calls free per day, and then you can start charging people if they want to use your API. So I hope that you are really interested in knowing about how you can create your own API. And now let's look into it. So now that you are having this high level understanding of how an API works, now let's look into how is it going to be useful for our project. So far what we are having is we have created or we have trained a machine learning algorithm where if we are going to pass in these four properties of a star, that is luminosity, temperature, radius, as well as the absolute magnitude, your machine learning algorithm is going to go ahead and give you the type of star it belongs to, whether it's a red dwarf, hypergiant, whatever it is. Now, we haven't yet created an API. So we are going to look into how we can create an API, but what's the whole point of creating the API is what I'm going to explain you right now. So let's say that there is a smart telescope company out there, and currently the telescopes are capable enough that, let's say for example, if they are centering the telescope onto a particular location out there in sky, and if there is a star present over there, we are able to fetch out this information about what is the temperature of that specific star, what is the luminosity, radius, absolute magnitude, and even more different properties of a star. And now this telescope company is focusing on integrating this real-time update with respect to that if we are able to get this kind of information about the star properties, they should also display the type of star it belongs to on the basis of the star properties. And therefore, what they are looking forward to is this type of APIs that we are going to design, where if they're able to give all this kind of star properties, our API is going to return that what is the type of star it belongs to. So that's how our API is going to be useful for this type of telescope. So we are going to build up this whole API where we are going to get this information from this telescope software that, you know what, the star that I am looking at currently, these are the properties. Now you tell me what is the star type it belongs to in real time. So along with all this kind of star properties, now the telescope users are also going to get an idea of what type of star they are looking at. So that's the whole idea of how super useful our API could be for this type of telescope softwares. Now just note that this is just a simple example that I have created of my own to give you an idea of how useful this API could be. Right now our project is pretty much smaller, just to give you an idea of how you can create an API if you have to. But let's just say that if you're going to evolve your kind of concept on this specific project, and you're able to come up with different type of ideas of how people can use our API, you can simply create different type of endpoints for different type of services that your API can offer, and you can host it in this type of a server. So let's say this type of different type of software companies, if they are requiring some specific things from what you guys are providing, in that case, they're going to make a specific API request, just like how you are going to create some kind of order in a restaurant. You don't order everything, you just order specific thing that you would like to have on that particular instant. So just like that, different type of software companies are going to come depending on what type of different services that you are offering with the help of your API. They're going to make specific requests to that endpoints, and then depending on if the request is valid or not, you're going to give a response to that specific software, and they can start using it. And once you see that your API is getting a lot of popularity, you can start having this kind of things, just like I had shown you with respect to weather API. You can keep the first initial API calls free to use, but right after that, let's say for example, after 1,000 API calls in a single day, if it's really in demand, what you can do is you can start asking people to pay for it. And if your services are really productive for their company, they are surely going to go ahead and pay it to you. So that's the whole idea, guys. I hope that you have understood the idea of how an API works, how is it going to be useful for our specific project. Now the question comes that how we are going to create this type of API. Well, that's where the fast API is going to come into the picture. So for that, what I've done is I've just attached a link to this fast API documentation. So I'll just go to that documentation and explain it to you that why should we using the fast API in order to build our API for this specific project. And if I just scroll below over here, we are having the official documentation link. Well, that's where we are right now. And the second link is given with respect to the source code. And it redirects to this GitHub repository. And just look into the popularity that it has gained. It is currently having more than 69,000 stars on this repository. So you are also going to realize that it's very easy to use this kind of fast API. It saves a lot of your time to create this kind of API. At the same time, it's a production grade that you will be creating. All right, so all of these things are going to make sense once we start writing this kind of codes in our specific project. It is going to make more sense. But just to give you a brief overview of what exactly is the fast API. Fast API is a modern, fast with the high performance web framework for building APIs with Python with any versions above 3.8 that is based on standard Python type hints. Now, there are some of the things that it will not really make sense if I just go ahead and explain this to you. But now these are the key features that you can simply go ahead and look into by just redirecting to this specific link and look into all these kind of key features by yourself. But what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go and show this to you that how you can build API for yourself with the help of fast API and why you should be actually considering the fast API. Trust me, it's so fast. It's very easy to use. And if you are knowing about Python, then understanding the fast API is not a big deal. And then here are some of the opinions for the people who are working at Microsoft, Uber, Netflix. They are actually using the services of fast API and they are really happy about it. And therefore, there is no doubt that fast API is so good. We are also going to go ahead and start using it into our specific project. Alright guys, so that's the end of this video over here. But I hope that by now you are having a very good understanding about what is this fast API and why should we use it. Now I'll see you in the next video. We're going to start with the project setup.